Hi, this is Jon Smart. Welcome to the next Sooner, Safer, Happier podcast. And I am really excited to be in Sydney in Australia and really excited to be joined by Lauren here at Suncorp. So Lauren, hi.
Hi, it's excellent to have you in Oz.
Great, it's really great to be here. It's like a summer's day in London.
Yeah, totally.
And it's the winter. So Lauren, could you just say a bit about your role and what you're doing here at Suncorp?
Yes, so my role here is part of the enterprise delivery practice. So we're accountable for delivering value and change for Suncorp Insurance, as well as all of our technology teams, as well as all of our corporate teams. I'm also the lucky person to sponsor our transforming ways of working. So yeah, on a journey across the organisation to work differently.
That's great. And Suncorp, as a company, yes. What does Suncorp do?
Right. We are a financial services organisation, ASX listed, around 13,000 employees. We have 3 lines of business. We have a bank. We also have an insurance company here in Australia, and we have an insurance company in New Zealand. Great.
So financial services.
Yep, highly regulated.
Yeah, highly regulated.
Lots of competition.
Yeah.
Lots of change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and a large organisation.
Yep.
So lots of usual headwinds, I imagine, and challenges. And to kind of cut to the chase and to start with your kind of top 3 to 5 learnings. Yeah. What are your at this moment in time? What are your kind of top 3 to 5 learnings about ways of working?
Well, you got 5 from me because the learnings are like as long as my arm and down the hill. But my first one is you need to acknowledge the skills that you need to be able to partner with you to transform. Don't high five too early is my second. My third is think big but start small. My fourth is metrics matter. And then my 5th is learn from everyone but copy no one.
Awesome. Did you copy that from someone?
A guy called Will that works with us, and you know well.
Yeah. Learn from everyone and copy no one. Yeah. All of that is music to my ears.
Yes.
Think big, start small, learn fast. Metrics
matter.
Matter. Not cookie cutter. Not one size fits all.
Yep.
High five not too early.
Celebrate but don't call victory.
Celebrate but don't call victory.
Yep.
And make sure you've got the right skills.
Yes.
Awesome. So we're going to come back to those.
Cool.
We'll drill into them.
Yep.
So your context. So let's kind of wind back a bit.
Yep.
And if you could describe your context that you're in. So what's the environment you're in, and the kind of the constraints and the headwinds and the situation you're trying to change in.
So we had a change in leadership and we had a change in strategy. What our strategy was that we were coming back to our core business. We needed to invest in our bank and insurance lines of business, and it was just be good at the basics. We had a new strategy. It did really reinforce the fact that we had to invest in our core businesses. We were investing over 4 key pillars to make sure that our brands were well invested in. Digital first, a digital first kind of ambition. We had a whole lot of focus on our core pricing and risk selection, things that is bread and butter to an insurance company, as well as then a strategy to be best in our claims. So you can see it's just, we're not thinking anything wild and crazy here. We're coming back and investing in our core. We knew that we needed to deliver returns above cost of capital. We knew that we needed to get our insurance margins up. We had a challenge in our cost base. We knew that we needed to be able to reduce our cost base. And then we had a very ambitious target to move from a 80% either contact center or manual processing in our sales to and 20% digital. We wanted to reverse it. We wanted to achieve 80% digital and 20% human touch. others in the industry, we had a whole lot of headwinds that we knew we had to lean into as well. Inflation, supply chain issues. We were to experience COVID and get through that. We knew that in insurance we will always have major weather events, and that did happen over the course of the plan period. 3 La Nina weather cycles here in Australia, which caused a huge amount of natural hazard issues. We have reinsurance costs increasing, a reinsurance reset across the industry, and then just other pressures around interest rate rises and market volatility, cyber, all these things that are shared with all of my peers, and a fundamental kind of acknowledgement that if we kept doing what we were doing today, we weren't going to be successful. In addition, we were given a huge opportunity with a very sizable investment budget, an investment in change to come back and to execute that strategy, to come back and invest in our core. And it was kind of we're given a second chance here. We need to absolutely make the most of it, but we need to change as an organisation to be able to deliver to that.
So that's a very clear why. That's a very clear, never waste a good crisis.
Oh, totally.
That's a very clear why.
My boss tells me that all the time.
And and that's a clearer why than a lot of other organisations. Or a lot of other organisations, it might be because it's kind of, my perception is because it's fashionable, because other companies are doing it, because they're being advised to do something around ways of working. So that's a very clear business situation around return on capital, margin, cost, becoming an investable business as a public listed company, changing leadership. So that's a super crystal clear set of goals and problems to overcome. Now, most organisations at that point would keep on working the way they're working, harder rather than smarter, and think, well, we just need to do what we're doing, but we just need to really buckle down now, and we need more deadlines and drop dead dates and to force our way through the situation, and maybe even go out and hire more people to get the problem solved in exactly the same way of working, which often happens, is what I see. So how did it happen then that there was this light bulb moment of doing the recognition that doing the same thing, the definition of stupidity, doing the same thing repeatedly and expecting a different outcome? So it's great that was in what you just described. Then how did that realization happen? Because it doesn't always happen.
No, it doesn't. And I hear you see the safe have you talk about this a lot. It starts at the top, and we had change in leadership. We had some of our executive leadership team come in from other organisations, and a clear vision that this is what we want to be doing and this is where we want to move to. Really, really did help. And there was a huge acknowledgement that the way we are working is slowing us down. It's like we know what the what is, we know what we need to do. It's how we're doing it, which is what we want to focus on, and that was at the heart of our mission. It was a transform our ways of working. We are fundamentally agile. But we need to make it fit for us. But it was a how do we work together? How do we organise ourselves? How do we measure ourselves? Ambition at its core. Is
there, and it sounds like, I just want to double check this, that there is an incentive coming from the executive committee, the senior leadership team, the top table. There's a clear incentive from the senior most leadership team.
Absolutely. I feel incredibly supported by the leadership team, and it's important. We haven't spoken about agile with the leadership team, right? Because you got to get these glazed eyes, and there's a bit of hype that comes with agile, which can sometimes create a bit of disbelief, right? But we have focused on the core things we need to do to change our ways of working to make us work better together. We anchored this to some really clear objectives, and we've said to the teams, number one, we have to be chasing higher customer satisfaction. And how do we build that into the way that we work? 50% faster. We want to be faster. 50% faster. We need more engaged people. So happier people, more engaged people, and more productive. So 10, 20% more productive, 100% transparency of work, but anchoring a conversation around what we want to achieve, like what are the clear outcomes that we want to achieve, versus talking about agile is a different shift there for them.
That resonates.
Yeah.
That resonates with the sooner, safer, happier narrative. This is such an important learning, and it's so good that you're doing this.
Definitely.
I couldn't agree more with what you just described in terms of if you use the A word. The A word is a turn off. Agile. It's like, why is this person talking to me about Scrum and Kanban? And actually, you're using language that resonates with people, which is customer satisfaction, time to value, happy people. It's like, you can't argue with that.
No, and they're core metrics that any executive team will look at and want to improve on.
Yeah.
And if you can anchor it there and make sure that your metrics matter and you underpin that, then you will get the buy-in.
And a reflection where I have a view over, lots of organisations. You'll be surprised how many organisations actually don't have a focus on that, or maybe surprised, not surprised. A large degree of organisations have a focus on the what. So at the most senior leadership team level, typically there's 4 or 5 strategic pillars, and typically they're all what rather than how.
How, yeah.
So even the fact you've been using the word how is a key success factor here. And the fact that any senior leadership team are as interested in the how we do the what as the what obviously means you're more likely, as you said, to achieve the what.
To achieve the what, yeah. And the what might change.
It might.
Well, it might, right?
Will.
So you can't, totally, right? And you need a way to be able to pivot around that.
Yeah. So I think there are, from what you've said, there are a lot of key patterns and takeaways here for other organisations. Senior leadership support, focused on the how as well as the what. Not only that, but you've articulated very clearly how you're measuring the success. Customer satisfaction, time to market, happier, and productive, more transparent work. I'm assuming that's strategy to execution alignment, making the work visible.
Exactly.
Just the fact you're able to say those as well makes Suncorp an exception rather than the norm. Excellent. And this is what other organisations should be doing. I think I know the answer to this question. So I presume you're measuring customer satisfaction, time to market, happier, more productive. I presume you're measuring those.
We are.
Awesome.
We are. We measure them. We measure them at a team level. We measure them at a value stream level, and we are embedding them into what I call our conversation that we have with our teams as well as executives and our board about how are we going on these. We call them flow metrics. It's taken me a while to get the board and our executive team to understand what that is. But now this is part of our conversation. When I go and I talk to them, I'm not only talking to them about benefits and costs and kind of how well our delivery is going, but I'm talking to them about the efficiency in the model and our flow metrics, our throughput, our lead time, how happy our people are. And we are starting to build our maturity around our value as well. So what value are we driving on a quarterly increment? And my hope is that over the course of this financial year, we will shift to being able to have a very mature conversation about how do we optimize that value.
Yeah.
We're not quite there yet. We are at a team level. We're definitely at a function level. And then how do we kind of get our executives thinking that way as well?
Yeah. And you were telling me earlier, the first page you put in front of people. So do you want to tell that story about what's on the first page of the status report? Yep.
So what is on the first page of the status report is our outcomes, our key results, and our flow metrics. The the team's done an excellent job at kind of working in with our value streams and in with our platforms to make sure that we've got robustness around our mission definition, outcomes, key results. We can track them. We're making commitments quarterly. Then we can understand how we've gone towards those commitments, and then our flow metrics. So that combined, how are we generating value and how well are we generating that value is the heart and the heartbeat of our portfolio management conversation. It's still important that you measure your benefits, that you track your costs, and that you know how your overall delivery is progressing. But that's just further down.
Yeah.
That's just further down,
yeah.
And it's about focusing the conversation on the incremental value.
Yeah.
And like I said, over time, we'll then get to a ability to be able to have executives pivot the capacity to maximize value. Yeah.
That's super impressive because it's a culture hack. It's a ninja move. By making that page one, the attention goes straight to the outcomes and the flow of value, which is a great culture hack. So that people fixate. And in my experience, if you have an individual who tends to be command and control and a bit controlling, it's great for them to fixate on the key results and the flow metrics, and obviously not command and controlling to the point of telling people how to do things, but actually let's get people to fixate on the key results. So the conversation is not, have we built solution X by the 31st of March, and why is this a red rag status? But rather, why aren't the key results moving?
Why aren't they moving?
Well, we've run these experiments, and it turns out the hypothesis was wrong, and it turns out that actually we don't need to cross the river. We need to turn around and go backwards over the hill instead to achieve the outcome we want, dear leader. Can you help us with that?
Yes.
So it drives the right conversations.
It does.
So I think that is fantastic that you're doing that.
Yeah. It's also interesting watching the maturity of the leader over the course of it, the last 12 months that we've been doing this. Historically, leader says the what we need to do, right? And the leader goes, this is what we're doing, now go forth and do. And what I've witnessed over the year is that the leaders have been more hands-off. I'm going to set the direction, and I'm going to empower the team to figure out the what, and then empower them to pivot as they learn through experiments. And that's very different to the way that most organisations work, and it just takes time and practice. It also takes confidence. And that's where the metrics come in. That's where the metrics come in, right? Leaders like data. They like to have confidence that things are, they can see with data. And as soon as you can provide that to them, all of a sudden they feel confident. The hands come off the steering wheel and they start to empower the teams.
Yeah. And I think it's like, any human wants to know that there are responsibilities and accountabilities. And the goal here, however the behaviour is expressed, the intent here is that I feel in control, and we're going to achieve our desired goal, whatever the goal is. And usually the goal is expressed as output. So that's when you then, as you said, that's when you then get the more prescriptive behaviour of I'm going to tell you what bridge to build. But if you can do this ninja move where control all you like on the outcome and the key results, but you're not saying, but you're leaving to the team to decide how to achieve that. Then there is a key for the unlock there, which then leads to more empowerment and autonomy in terms of how you achieve the goal. Plus, I think another key for the unlock here then is one of your other outcomes is minimizing time to learning. Because if you've got the outcomes but you've got a long time to learning, then the key results are never going to move, and actually there isn't a feeling of like we're in control.
That's it.
So what are your learnings so far about minimizing time to learning and getting that fast feedback loop, which gives you your genuine business agility?
So we've acknowledged that this changing the way that people work is the processes, the way that they break down the work. It needs close coach and continuous feedback to change the thinking. So one of the things we did do with our value streams is we formed a program that we called Brilliant at Basics. This is one of the many things that it focuses on. Just how have you defined the work? How do you break down the work so that you can have smallest increments, smallest time to value, test and learn, and then kind of replan. it looks at that, but it also looks at what are the mindsets that you've put in place, how well do you assess those mindsets. It's a self-assessed survey, which then our coaches help provide some guidance on. And then it looks at the rituals. So like, yes, you've been able to break down your work to the minimal kind of smallest time to value, but then have you reflected? What have you learned? Have you celebrated your learnings? Have you applied that to what you do next? Having a process that the team is able to self-assess themselves against these dimensions, having a coach that can give their perspective, then allows us to build a really purposeful plan around how do we help, how do we support. And what we found is that breaking down the work was really hard for people, right? They've got to do all this. But having this in place allows them to pinpoint that as a focus area, and then the coaches help them break down the work further and further and further. You know, and then having the data. So this is how well you think you're going, but then how well is the data telling us? That combined is really powerful for teams, because you're giving them all the information for them to be able to then make it better.
And are you finding that it's surfacing impediments?
Absolutely, yeah. And the impediments for they can either be different for the tribes, and then how do we, as a core kind of leadership team, look for the common impediments and fix it in the system.
And how are you doing that? How are you catching the common impediments and solving them?
So the way that we've done that is we have them bubble up. So all of the coaches are embedded into either our tribes or their platforms. The coaches consolidated on a quarterly cadence that then feeds into our, we call it momentum. That's our kind of name for transforming ways of working into the COE. The COE prioritizes so we use the ways of working principles to be able to make sure that we've got active listening, and then that feeds up into a quarterly backlog of work for us to make the system better, and focus on the systematic issues that we need to lean into.
Yeah. So that my view on that is what you just described there. That's another pattern for success. So for anyone that's listening to this, I highly recommend they do everything you've been talking about so far, Lauren, because impediments are not in the path, impediments are the path. This is about going from impediment to impediment, and what you just described is that kind of catch process. Solve them at the lowest possible level, as you just said. Throw it up. You need to have someone who can catch it. So I guess you've organised yourselves so that there are people that can catch it and solve it. And then what I heard you say is you're prioritising those impediments. So you've got the theory of constraints. You've got the biggest impediments at the top of the list.
That's it.
And then you're following up then to make sure that they are alleviated. So they're no longer the bottleneck.
And it's a never-ending list of opportunities that we need to focus on. But one thing that you've just said there, Jon, this isn't a program anymore. It's part of my team. It's part of our mission. We have our Business Agility Centre of Excellence. It's a permanent team. It's there. It's the coaches are there. It's acknowledged within our structure, within our purpose, within my team's kind of service offering that we are here to help this evolution ongoing, and then it's built into our ways of working, so that we then have the continuous feedback loop with our mission to just keep growing the business agility.
And when you say our, can you just explain what you mean by our way of working?
Suncorp's way of working.
The whole company. And the reason I asked that question is the journey from PMO to VRO. So value realization office, from project management office to value realization office. Can you tell me a bit about what you're doing on that topic?
I can. I'll start with the why. That was kind of our focus. Our initial focus was how our mindsets. How do we need to think differently? How do we have to organise ourselves? So our operating model, organising ourselves, getting ourselves into value streams, and our core system of work. How do people work? Where do they plan work? Ceremonies. We focused initially on that, and we got our value stream set up. We went straight down to brilliant at basics, lots and lots of coaching, lots of active listening, and the biggest impediment that kept coming up was that our systems, governance processes and practices was the biggest blocker to flow. We were hearing it through our retros. We did an external assessment of our business agility, number one, And then interestingly, Suncorp, we completed culture assessment across the organisation, and that was talking about prioritisation and prioritising value as being a real blocker for our culture. So lots of data points that came in to say this is our kind of next big unlock to take our ambition to the next level. So what we did is we said, look, we have a very traditional PMO. Our front page was always about cost and benefit. It had lots of rag statuses in it. And we had a very traditional heavy governance processes, lots of documentation, lots of ask for requests. And we acknowledged that we needed to understand what does this look like in the context of a kind of a function, a support function that's going to enable flow, enable value, excuse me, versus holding it back. And that's when we said, well, what does this look like? We don't know. We need to design it, which is where your company really helped us. And the core principles that we took forward is we are a highly regulated organisation. There is controls that need to be put in place. So let's make sure that we're clear on what they are. And it's not like we're throwing business case benefits and costs to the wind. There is an element of that has to remain. Tick, let's just understand what is minimal viable there for that. Number two, how do we enable a conversation that is just relentlessly focused on value? And what does that look like in a process versus, what does that look like in process? What are the data we need? What's the capabilities we need to build? And then how does that have to flow into, well, the conversation is what I call it, the conversation we're having with our people, the conversation we're having with our executives, how does it flow into that? And off the back of it, what we've done is we've reshaped our traditional PMO to one which is our value partners working in with our tribes and our platforms, helping coach and embed a focus on value. Do we have work aligned to strategy? How do we measure? Have we defined outcomes, and how do we measure value? They then take that and they turn it into the artifacts, the bits and pieces that we need to be able to have the right conversations to optimize value.
That's great. So more of a servant leadership, supportive coaching stance,
it's coaching.
as opposed to a please submit your Gantt chart type stance.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We did have a culture of a PMO being a police force of an organisation, and you must abide by this really. And that's a hard cultural perspective to change, which was why I felt very strongly about relabeling as well. Rebrand, have a different perspective in place. And through the process, we have reorganised ourselves. We've gone through a operating model change to make sure we've got the right roles, the right capabilities. I think that's important to start off with. And now we're focusing on the work processes and the how they work, what they do on a monthly, on a quarterly basis.
And value. So how are you measuring value? How are you articulating value?
Well, we have our outcomes and key results, and those key results we look at over several different kind of dimensions. We have our financial kind of outcome key results that we measure. We have our customer key results that we measure, and then we have regulatory and risk key results that we measure as well. What is super fascinating is when you map them all together, you can see the golden thread and where it might be broken, but you also see big gaping holes. And it won't surprise you. And I'm sure everyone that goes on this maturity journey of focusing on value, we have a lot of value in our financials. We have a lot of not value in our customer. We need to be better at defining that and measuring it, because it's a muscle that we need to build.
And the aha moment there is you're able to say that and you know it.
We can see it.
You figured it out. Like most organisations wouldn't be able to say what you just said because they wouldn't know it.
They would know it
because there isn't an alignment. There isn't a golden thread of value with an alignment from execution to strategy.
Well, I think you hear me say it. The data is really important. right? And having it there and being able to map it in a way where you go, okay, this is where we need to focus. And we're a financial services organisation. We've got a lot of CFOs that work here with us. So we feel comfy in the revenue and cost. That's what we put in there. Where we are really trying to shift a culture where we say, well, hang on, how are we measuring customer value?
Yeah.
How are we measuring customer value?
That is fantastic. So I want to come back now to your top 5 learnings.
Okay.
And maybe drill in a bit more. So the second one, the high 5, celebrate but don't call victory. Can you tell me a bit more about that one?
Yeah. I think our executive team's a bit sick of me saying this, because every time I go and speak to them, which is quite often, I say, we're doing really well. Like, all of the data is going in the right direction, but we are not calling victory. And the reason why I say that is because every organisation has so many different priorities, so many at any one time. If you call victory, you don't become a priority, and then the risk of backslide is there, and that's real, right? This transformation takes continuous investment and continuous focus, and if we high five, call victory, we risk taking our eye off the prize and going backwards. So to be successful, need the support of the executive team and the focus of the executive team. And this hasn't got an end destination.
Yep.
It doesn't have an end destination. You know, we need to be focusing on it. So I'm not calling victory. We have a long way to go.
Yeah.
You can hear in my conversation around, definition about, we have a long way to go.
Yeah.
So let's make sure that we really celebrate everything that we've achieved. But if we call victory, it's highly likely that we go backwards.
Yeah. Yes. And as you said, you're never done improving.
Totally.
Yeah.
Never done improving.
And human systems entropy, the weeds grow.
Yep.
So related to that and related to your third point, think big, start small, learn fast, behavior. And so think big, start small, and celebrating. So that means, people, when you start small, obviously you want to get to more an experimental type mindset of, we've got outcomes we're trying to achieve. We want the cheapest cost of failure. We don't want an expensive cost of failure, reducing time to value. So one thing that we haven't yet really touched on is behavior, and in particular, but leaders at all levels, and the more senior a leader you are, the bigger your shadow. So this does require a shift in terms of psychological safety, empowerment, autonomy, celebrating failure, flirning. I think you called it.
I did.
You called it
That's
earlier today,
word, yeah.
which I'm going to copy
copy?
you.
Love
I'm going
it.
to copy you on
Love
that.
it.
Flirning, kind of. There's no such thing as a failed experiment, just learning. So kind of failure learning.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a bit more about that and behaviours and whatever you're doing to help try to shift behaviours? Yeah.
Well, I think the first thing to note there is, before we even thought about, like, how do we have to reorganize ourselves, what's our system of work look like, we focused on defining our mindsets, because mindset's going to drive your behavior, right? And those mindsets were at the start of every meeting, they were at the end of every meeting, they were there to remind everybody about how we need to shift the way we think, which is going to shift the way we behave. So we had a couple. Pace over perfection was our first, trust and transparency, empowered teams, and customer obsession. So just 4 punchy mindsets that were anchored against everything. And when I say, like, we started every meeting, ELT, board, ELT, every level of the organisation, we anchored our transformation around these 4 mindsets. So it was the first thing we did. From that drives the behaviour change. And a part of that was putting some other sort of hacks into the way that we think. So a good example, we had 2 of our value streams that we set off first. They were called our pioneer tribes. When they just showcased about their flirnings. That was all they showcased, right? We were like, flirnings. We just want to know what you learnt, what were the failures that you learnt from. And flirnings is now part of it's a Suncorpism. We all talk about it. How is it? Yeah. How do we celebrate it? From there, we were then able to, once we had the data, be able to marry the data up against the mindsets and the behaviours that we were seeing. It wasn't just the team. Like I said, this brilliant at basics concept, we're able to have the team self-assess themselves on their mindsets and behaviours. So, those that maybe weren't getting it as well were able to show it in a really safe environment, and then we could marry it up against the metrics, and they always correlate.
They always correlate.
They do.
So the better data, as in quicker time to value, happier people, better quality, etc., lines up to where the behaviours are
better.
Where you would better. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, right? And then that's really powerful, because that's a conversation that I can have with my peers and sit down and go, all right.
Subjective.
It's not.
Yeah.
We have the flow up of info from the teams of how they're assessing themselves in the mindsets, as well as the leaders in their mindsets and behaviours. And then I have the real proof in the pudding data here, which is how well you're doing.
Yeah. So my last question then is, in terms of the benefits you're seeing so far.
Yep.
So first of all, can you just like a reminder of how long you've been on this journey?
Yep.
First of all, and then and bearing in mind it's a never-ending journey, what are the sorts of benefits you're seeing so far?
So how far are we in? We spent about a year designing, and so designing the way that we need to design our value streams. We went through a total restructure around how we organise ourselves into platforms and chapters, and then we've been launched for almost a year. We will have our first birthday in September, and there'll be a big party. So kind of a year plan, a year in. So 2 years, I'd say, of us working through this journey. So firstly, like metrics don't lie, we have seen a 60% increase in our throughput.
How much, sorry?
60%.
60%. Wow.
Increase in our throughput.
Wow.
Our lead time has improved by 10%, and our overall team health is up by 12%. I'm super proud of that, Jon.
Yeah.
There'll be a bit of noise in the data, because not every widget's the same, but I keep saying to the team, this doesn't matter about the specific number, it's the trend.
Yes.
It's the macro trend.
Correct.
And it's all going in the right direction, which is excellent. But the thing that I kind of am most proud of is that the way that we do work here at Suncorp feels differently, smells differently, is different. It's just different.
Yeah.
And the company's winning.
Yeah.
We are no longer an underperforming company. We are absolutely an investable business, and we are going great guns as well. So, it feels different, and that's when you know it's working.
Yeah.
The data's great, but it feels different.
That is incredible. That is a great beginning and end. We were underperforming, and that was public knowledge, you said.
Yep.
And now your results were announced 2 days ago.
Yep.
And you're winning.
We're winning. Yeah, we are.
And people are happier.
Yeah. And we haven't stopped, right? Nobody is
going
winning,
yes, like
high
you said.
five, go.
You're lesson learned number 2.
Yeah.
You're not declaring victory.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool.
And also the fact you're able to answer the question I asked about data and the benefits, where you're actually able to give me, numbers. Is rare and really good as well.
Yep.
So is there any question that you wish I asked you that I haven't asked you? Is there anything else you want to share?
Oh, I could sit here and talk to you about
likewise,
this.
likewise.
For hours. Well, I think we've covered most of it.
Great. Awesome. Thank you very much, Lauren.
Pleasure.
And as I've said a number of times today already, having spent some time with you in a number of other sessions, I really do think that Suncorp are way ahead of other organisations in only really 1 year.
Yeah.
I think forget the 1 year of being in a room personally, being a bit tongue in cheek.
Yeah.
But the real learning starts when you actually start doing the doing.
Yes.
So I think really you've kind of been on the journey for 1 year, and everything you've described, and it's like, do you want to write a book? Right, soon as said happy at 2 or something. But no, you're. I think an example of awesomeness,
thank you, Jon.
and everything you're doing is spot on. And clearly the proof of the pudding's in the eating, and you're getting better results and happier people.
Yeah.
So I think you're doing an amazing job, and keep going. And I look forward to a chat that we're going to have again in 6 months or 12 months' time, and see where you're at then.
Love it.
So thank you very much, Lauren.
Thank you for the invitation.